Pretty cool. We see that Argentina has passed a wealth tax to fund COVID relief, one-off 2% levy that applies to individuals with assets of 2.45 million or more. I mean, why would that be a controversial thing, right? The people with the most amount of money and resources should be the ones helping out the most. Shouldn't be asking the people at the very bottom of the economic ladder, if you will, to be sacrificing right now, because they are already hurting desperately in Argentina, in the United States, all across the globe. Buenos Aires. Argentina's Congress has approved a wealth tax that will impose a one-off levy on people with large personal fortunes as the government tries to boost revenue hit hard by the COVID-19 pandemic. Senators gave final approval to the so-called Solidarity and Extraordinary Contribution Law, which had already been passed by the lower house with 42 votes in favor and 26 against, the chamber said on its official Twitter account. Legislation stipulates a one-off tax of at least 2% individuals with assets of more than 200 million pesos, or equivalent of 2.45 million US dollars, with the government aiming to collect some 3.7 billion. It's definitely a start, but what I would say is, let's say people who have accumulated wealth over $10 million, higher percentage, people over 30 million, etc. Keep, because frankly, there should be no billionaires in the world. In order to have a billionaire in the world, there has to be a lot of poverty and inequality for that person to amass that amount of wealth, because that frankly requires the exploitation of workers and also the planet oftentimes as well. Bee Gees. How You Come In a Broken Heart. I think the Bee Gees are Australian band, weren't they? The Aporte Solidario is extraordinary because the circumstances are extraordinary, said ruling party Senator Anabel Fernandez Sagasti on Twitter. Quote, "We must find points of connection between exactly those who have the most to contribute and those who are in need." Perfect. Should be called a radical leftist, a radical Marxist, by the right-wing media, people on Fox News saying something like that in the United States, even though it's completely accurate, makes sense, stands up to reason. It's the ethical, moral principle, obviously. Proceeds from the tax will be used to buy equipment and supplies to fight COVID-19, fund assistance to small and medium-sized companies, support poor neighborhoods, and to help develop the domestic natural gas sector. Law spearheaded by the ruling party Peronist coalition of President Alberto Fernandez has been criticized by the more conservative opposition. Argentina, the third largest economy in Latin America, is heading into its third-year recession with high inflation and a sharp increase in poverty. Boom. So that's what's going on in Argentina. Juxtapose that to the U.S. U.S. billionaires gained $1 trillion since the pandemic. Where are the politicians? Where's the fervor to adopt a wealth tax to help the working class in the United States, who has been absolutely and utterly devastated during this pandemic? And again, we just see these, case in point here, huge transfers of wealth upwards, while tens of millions of people in the U.S. have lost their jobs, lost their health care. Tens of millions more are on the brink of losing their housing. All these, eviction moratoriums are soon going to be by the wayside. Unemployment insurance has run out. Those extended benefits ran out in July. People got, if they qualified, this means tested, paltry $1,200 check back in March. And yet billionaires gained $1 trillion since then. Capitalism is the virus. This is doing exactly what it's, designed to do. And you don't hear many, definitely nobody in the mainstream media that I'm aware of that, applies this class analysis to what's going on right now. And they get in those positions for a reason, because you're not going to get on the air at CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, etc., if you're not willing to toe the party line, you know. American billionaires haven't been just immune to the pandemic, they have been thriving in it, drastically increasing their collective wealth. An analysis by Chuck Collins at the Institute for Policy Studies found that American billionaires have seen their wealth grow by $1 trillion since March of this year, more than 34%. That was not the case during the 2008 financial crisis, when it took Forbes' 400 richest people 3 years to recoup their losses from the Great Recession. Collins' findings highlight a wealth gain by a mere 650 individuals got $1 trillion richer, while I would say, frankly, at this point, you know, probably a statistical majority of the country is really struggling, hurting right now. Real unemployment is probably actually closer to 20%. And then, you know, all that other stuff I just mentioned, there is a lot of pain and suffering to go around. And again, capitalism is the virus that's literally putting profits of Wall Street, this owner oligarch class, these 650 people's financial interests above literally the lives of, you know, everybody else, the whole working class in the United States. And that's, again, inherent to capitalism. Capitalism necessitates poverty, necessitates unemployment, necessitates these boom and bust cycles. And it's disgusting and obviously not sustainable unless, you know, you're one of these 650 people who have increased their wealth by $1 trillion. I mean, it's just disgusting. Billionaires obviously should not exist. It's just fucking disgusting. There's some of these disgusting capitalists: Buffett, Zuckerberg, Gates, Musk, Bezos. I mean, it's fucked. It's fucked. And again, I think Boots Riley is totally correct on this point. The only way to affect this system, to actually get some real substantive change, to get people in government to actually address the needs of the working class in the U.S., which are obviously huge right now, all the stuff I've been talking about, listing off, only way to strike at the heart of capitalism is to get some type of massive general strike where people en masse withhold their labor and it brings the economy to a screeching halt. Once that happens, once those stonks start to drop, then maybe at that point we'll be able to get things like Medicare for all, so we don't have tens of thousands of people in the US dying each year because they don't have health care, or tens of millions of people this year losing their health insurance because they got fired. And it also, oh yeah, it saves money, or an emergency UBI, or a wealth tax, or a Green New Deal, destroying the military industrial complex. I mean, all of these super important things aren't going to get done, I don't think, until labor gets organized and is able to strike at the heart of capitalism, no pun intended, through a general strike. And obviously that is a huge task. There is no real organized labor movement. There's definitely no real organized militant labor movement, but that same video I'm referencing Boots Riley from, he also talks about how there has been, you know, a massive wave of strikes happening all throughout the U.S. It was hundreds or maybe thousands. And, you know, if those are able to coalesce, get bigger, organize, you know, get people infiltrate these workplaces with the express purpose of organizing people around stuff like this. If you're able to get momentum behind that, then I actually do think we'll be able to get some change, because Boots Riley, and I just love the dude. His analysis, he's just an amazing artist, really impressive. Yeah, just really impressed by the person. And watch the movie. Sorry Not to Bother You. It's on Hulu. It's really great. It's by written and directed by Boots Riley. But I digress. Yeah, so it's just we gotta get organized. I think that's frankly the key. Organized labor. We live in a capitalist system. What are capitalists going to respond to when they start losing their money, when their investments start tanking? They'd have to listen to us at that point. So I think that's really. Oh, sorry. And before I went off on the little tangent there, what Boots Riley was saying is that, have we seen the most popular in terms of numbers, the biggest protest movement in the history of the U.S. has happened over the summer, over the last several months, due to police murdering of George Floyd. And obviously that was the straw that broke the camel's back. The criminal and justice system in the U.S. is hugely corrupt, hugely racist and white supremacist by design. The modern police in the U.S. are basically started back in the day around slave patrols, patrolling for runaway slaves, more or less, and their roots are firmly and deeply embedded in that culture, in that ideology, and that's why they carry out, white supremacy, and they are a tool of capitalism. The police are a form of social control. You never see them on the right side of social movements. No, they're always out there busting in the faces of people protesting, whether it's against police brutality or Occupy Wall Street or, whatever. They're always on the wrong side of that. So, yeah, just some thoughts. But kudos to Argentina. I definitely think that's a step in the right direction. And I mean, the political climate here in the U.S. is obviously pretty backwards compared to that. As Noam Chomsky and others have pointed out, the U.S. has two right-wing parties compared to, basically anywhere else in the world. Those are my thoughts. Share yours down below. Peace. Much love.